Hello Internet, Yulia speaking, and welcome to my Mosseri 2019 planner flip through. The first 2 pages of the year I did not work on that much, apart from the habit tracker, which is actually an addition to the Mosseri planner and the newer ones, but when I got mine, there still wasn't anything like it in there, so I made my own. The inspirational ones I did a little bit of work on, but because I got my planner when the year had already started, there was a lot in the beginning that I didn't quite have the chance to properly go through. I did do my usual kind of bullet journal style spreads of reminders and remedies and kind of things that I do for self-care or for academic purposes that I'd want to look back on throughout the year, and I always put those in the first few pages as kind of reminders and things that I can easily go back to. The recap and highlights, I still don't quite know what I want to do with those pages because I have another place where I write down my memories that I'll get to in a second. And the overview I actually used for my deadlines, and that worked out really well and was super handy. So once I figure out how I want to use the recap and highlights page, I'll put that into my planner that I use for the year 2020. As you can see, as I mentioned, the first 2 pages were pretty empty. And then we get to the monthly spreads. There's actually a bit of a story behind those because, as you could probably tell, or will be able to tell in the next few pages that I'll flip, is that the monthly ones were very empty for a majority of the year. And this is because I try my best to, in the beginning I did try my best to write down specific events of things that I'd want to go to, or maybe like birthdays and things in those monthly pages, but what ended up happening is that I'd never turn back to them because all of those events were written down in my phone calendar anyway, and I just use that far more often than I would use the monthly page, so I was in a bit of a dilemma in that sense, but I did figure out how I wanted to use it later on, so when we get to that, I'll say a bit more on that. Apart from that, I don't know if you've been able to notice, but the way that I plan my weekly spreads is, so I've got the horizontal layout, which basically means that the part on the left of each page is kind of more blank, and then the part on the right has little square paper, and I use the square paper part for actual to-dos and things that I must have done that day, and then the part on the left I use the kind of light bullet points that they have right underneath the date of each day, and I circle them with different colors depending on subjects and things, and each circle for me would mean like an hour of work. So then I'd write down specific assignments or homeworks and things that I'm meant to be working on in those hours. So if I know I'll have 3 hours in the day, for example, when I know I can be working on an assignment, then I'll put those circles there to make sure that I actually spend those 3 hours doing it. And then on some weeks there just is not really anything that I'm doing, and so I tend to make like a big lettering thing or put a bunch of sticky notes and things to cover up the empty pages, or sometimes they're just left blank. It depends on whether I go back later and add sticky things or if I just let them be. But I think that's only normal. Not every week, at least for me, is going to look super put together, just because I tend to get overwhelmed easily when it comes to planning. So when I have a lot of things that I'm meant to be doing, I actually do the opposite of what a smart person would do, and I don't write them down just because I feel like I'm meant to be constantly doing something, and I guess in my mind there's just no time to put it all down and organize it on paper. But I'm working on that. I'm trying to be better in that sense. Towards the end of the year, I started using color a little bit less because it just felt a little bit hectic. And I also finally figured out how I wanted to use those monthly pages. And what I started to do is actually use them as little memories or like small sentences of maybe things that stuck in my head for that day. And that way I didn't feel the pressure to always remember to turn to those monthly pages because I have like events that I may miss if I don't look at them. Because if I just didn't turn to that page a few times in a row, I'd just put a sticker on it instead. As you can see, this one was particularly colorful because I was just figuring out how I wanted it to look, but the ones that I have now in the 2020 planner are still quite hectic, but they're all written in black pen because I decided that the explosion of color was just a bit much for me. Yeah, and we've pretty much reached the end. There's a little splatter of me testing out pens, and my final to-do of the year, which is now done. Thank you for watching.